This is Yellowcake. You start in a bunker with limited supplies and a toilet, and there's an open world called the Wasteland where you can scavenge items to help you survive. There's even multiple ways to complete the game depending on what you decide to do. You may decide to explore the underground sewer network, or sit on the toilet, or spend your time mining for rare resources. It's really up to you. But eventually you'll come across something or someone that will help you escape. Then you can hop back in and try for a new ending if you'd like. I mean, it's up to you. So if that sounds like fun, you can wishlist the game on Steam right now. I started this journey around 6 or 7 months ago where I made a small prototype to test the idea and all the tech behind it. We've got the basics, you know, a bunker, a creepy ominous man staring through the window. You know, the essentials. There's not a whole lot here, and I knew I wanted something a bit more stylized. So weirdly, I decided to make a prototype in Fortnite, of all things. Because nothing quite screams survival horror like Ariana Grande and Peter Griffin hitting the gritty. The main advantage of prototyping in Fortnite is how easy it is to build a map and get down the feel of the world. I made a bunch of different rooms in the bunker, each serving a unique purpose. We've got a camera system to look around, bunk beds to sleep in, and I even played around with how I wanted the wasteland to look. Needless to say, at this point I was feeling a lot more comfortable about heading into Godot to start working on the real game. But first we need a solid foundation, and for Yellowcake this is the multiplayer framework, so you guys can play it with your imaginary friends. I made this prototype character in Blender and set up basic netcode for moving him around and syncing animations, before making one of the greatest discoveries of my entire life. Right, I don't normally do this, but this is like insane. So Godot has jiggle physics now. So I'm trying to get the gas mask to dangle, or the filter to dangle below the gas mask. This is insane. Jiggle! I've just been given far too much power. I've also got networked interaction hooked up, which is really useful for syncing events between all of our players. This system can be used to automate things like item drops and mining without me having to write extra code. I then experimented with making the eyes move and blink. This is pretty horrible, but it's not as bad as this cockroach I found. I don't have any memory of ever making it, but it exists. At the core of the game is items and inventory management. I want players to scavenge for their own food, water, and other cool items to help them escape. So we need a system to handle this. I chose to test this with a Geiger counter, which, if you don't know, if the needle is in the green, you're probably okay, and if it's in the red, you've just experienced one of the most painful deaths a human can experience. Here it is in the game. We can pick it up, move it around our inventory, and drop it on the ground. And just for the record, none of this art is final and will probably change throughout this video. Speaking of which, I think it's time we make a new player model. Here he is. I'm super proud of how this turned out.
Wait. Does that not look exactly like John?
Who the fuck is John? Dude, does not look like John.
Yeah, see?
No, that's not. Alright, listen here, you I animated the yellow dude with one of Synty's animation packs. They gave me this for free under the guise that I'd show them off in a video, but that was like 9 months ago, so at this point they probably just think I scammed them. So please check them out. They've got some cool packs. Very cool. As you can see here, I got it working perfectly on the first try. We then did some very professional multiplayer testing to play around with proximity chat and make sure everything works as intended. The filter even moves when the player's speaking. I think this is a pretty solid foundation to move forward with, so it's time to work on... The bunker is your home base in Yellowcake. You'll need to return here every so often to store your items and craft other meaningful items to help you survive. Now, I knew I wanted the bunker to look something like this, but the problem is, I'm no 3D artist, alright? Seriously, this was my first attempt. And recently I spent all of my money on this new house, so I don't think paying someone right now is exactly feasible. To make matters worse, I'm using the Godot game engine, which people typically see as a bit lackluster when it comes to 3D. But I'm determined to prove those people wrong, okay? Using only open source tools, a 24-pack of Red Bull, and some minor psychosis, we're gonna transform this bunker. In order to do this, we need to hit 3 non-negotiable criteria. Number 1 is stylized graphics. The game should be cartoony, but dynamic. Number 2 is real-time lights. I want all of the lights in Yellowcake to be completely real-time, meaning if you walk in front of a light or drop an item, it should cast its own shadow. And number 3, I want this game to be fast by default. If you're playing on a potato, it shouldn't look much different to somebody playing on their lunch break at NASA. I made a base mesh for the bunker so we can start working towards these goals. During the first pass, I grabbed some concrete and brick textures for the floors and walls, and added an outline to all of the harsh edges. This is a solid start, but it definitely needs some more work. So I made things a little darker and placed some lights and props around. Then I introduced fog and made the lights a little warmer. At this point, I felt like I was headed in the right direction, but it still looked too shit. I went back to the drawing board and remodeled the bunker, swapping out the bricks for this panel metal texture with some grime overlaid. I also placed some more details around the bunker, such as these lights and pipes. For the most part, I was pretty happy with this, but I think we're still quite far from the stylized look that I want for Yellowcake, so for now, I'm going to focus my efforts on the wasteland. I made some terrain and started to populate the world with canyons, caves, and spooky looking props. If you enter into this cave here, you'll encounter the Tiki tribe, a faction of friendly scavengers who just love to throw it back. Working with the Tiki tribe is one way you can escape the wasteland, but just as easily, you can ignore them and try to find a different way out. I also experimented with volumetric audio, so when you're outside, the voices and sound effects will sound perfectly normal, but if you're in an echoey environment like the bunker or caves, it's going to have some reverb. One big issue at the minute is we don't have a great way to tell players any information, so I started working on a quest system. For the first quest, I expanded the bunker with this reactor room. There's a power indicator to show how much energy the bunker has left, and these fuel rods that you can find to power up the reactor. Now, you may have noticed the lights are flashing red. If you didn't notice that, probably get that checked out. But this is another advantage of using real-time lighting. I'm taking all the wins I can get here, so we're going to check that one off the list. As for the other 2 points, I solved the third one by using fog to clip objects and lights beyond 35 meters of the player, and tweaking shadow settings to reduce the performance cost of our real-time lights. As for the first point, I know I've not made it look like much work there, but it was around a month between the bunker looking like this and this. Furthermore, it felt like I designed a really cool world, but I was struggling to actually turn it into a fun game. Needless to say, this really demotivated me. I had lots of ideas for other projects, and honestly I didn't feel like I had a clear vision of where I wanted the game to go. So, reluctantly, I decided to shelve Yellowcake and move on to some other projects. But all of a sudden, the most horrifying thought entered my mind. Maybe it's time to get a job? No. So, as a last-ditch effort, I posted some of my unfinished prototypes in a video on this channel. And that was all the motivation that I needed. Let's finish the bunker, guys. Naturally, we're going to make another model. This one's a lot bigger, and it adds some verticality, which will be important later. Our players now spawn inside this central hub with this spiral staircase leading up to the wasteland. I actually decreased the quality of the shadows, which might sound like a bad thing, but actually ended up softening their edges and giving us better performance. A huge win. Now, one problem is our materials are missing roughness and highlights. So we can solve this problem with a roughness map and specular highlights, but this only works when the surface is lit in some way. Seeing as the game is quite dark, this just isn't going to cut it. This really is the missing piece of the puzzle to get the graphics to where I want them to be and hit that final goal. So how can we make a material look metallic even when it's in complete darkness? Well, the approach that I came up with is to use the skybox. As mentioned earlier, the game masks anything beyond 35 meters with fog, meaning the skybox is up there just not really doing a whole lot. But we can assign a HDR texture to it to fake reflections. This isn't remotely realistic, but it really does fit this stylized theme quite well. And with that, I think I'm finally happy with how the game looks. Needless to say, motivation was at an all-time high at this point. So, it was time to work on the gameplay. The biggest problem is the role of the bunker. Before, you had to collect fuel rods and place them inside the reactor, but I don't want to force players back into the bunker all the time, as I want to encourage exploration and going on longer expeditions. But I don't want players to just ignore the bunker completely. To solve this, I added food and water into the game. The brands are named after some game devs that inspire me, like John Carmack and Sydney Sweeney, who made Fortnite. When scavenging in the wasteland, you'll find dirty water. This needs to be brought back to the bunker to clean it up, meaning early in the game you'll be pretty reliant on the bunker, but once you build up a stockpile, you'll be able to leave for longer before coming back. We also have the problem that the longer you play for, the further you'll have to travel to find food and water. So to solve this, I've added mushroom spores that can spawn far into the wasteland. These can be planted in the bunker in the farm room. And if you wait until the start of the next day, these will sprout into mushrooms which grant both food and water. But Barji, why are they green? Well, that takes us to the other side of the bunker where you'll find the sewers. These toxic waste-filled tunnels act as a quick way to get to and from the bunker, but are far more dangerous than moving through the wasteland. This toxic waste seems to be seeping into the mushrooms. I really want to add some crocodiles and other hazards in here for the next video. By the way, there was no AI used in the code or art for this game. I really want it to come across as the deranged ramblings of a madman, and I don't think a clanker can quite achieve that yet. Alright, so little bit of context here. I took some time off the other night to play Stardew Valley for the first time, and I haven't stopped. I've been fishing, I climbed a fucking volcano, but most of my time was spent in the mines. See, Stardew takes place in a small open world like Yellowcake, but there's also randomly generated mines that you can farm for rare loot. I thought it would be cool to take inspiration. I'm just gonna steal it. So I hopped into another project to prototype this and came up with an algorithm to generate endless shaft variations, and spent a little longer than I'd like to admit turning it into a mesh. I've also made helper functions for spawning objects randomly on the walls and ground. Back in the main project, I added a pickaxe item into the game and modeled some ruby veins and torches we can spawn using those helper functions. The pickaxe won't be easy to find, but once you do, you can build up your rubies to craft some overpowered items in the late game. Now, I'm definitely getting ahead of myself here, but I wanted to do something fun, so I've added a ruby-powered bike that you can repair outside of the bunker. And that's pretty much it for this video, but in the next one, we are going to work on the wasteland and some hostile threats. If you like this video and the game in general, the best thing you can do is wishlist the game on Steam. I can't stress enough how much it helps, and if you're feeling cheeky, you can also subscribe. I'm going to start doing some streams on this channel for Yellowcake, and that's the best way you can keep up to date with development. See ya!